A few years back, Santa Claus left a gift for me in the most unusual place, a Starbucks in Izmir, Turkey. In retrospect, it's not so surprising that Noel Baba, as he's known in Turkey, knew to find me there. I regularly stop by not just to order my morning pick-me-up, venti, chai latte, ikitani achara, sulu, but to chat with, to dialogue with the baristas. As they handcrafted my beverage, we talked about American culture, which usually meant Nicki Minaj, LMFAO, Maroon 5, and all the other musical stars of the year 2012. We also talked about Turkish culture and why some Turkish women preferred to wear the hijab, the headscarf, while others did not. We talked about Barack Obama's latest policy speech and the politics of Recep Erdogan, Turkey's then prime minister and current president. During that year abroad, we talked about anything and everything. And on a cold December morning, I discovered my name written on a bag of coffee beans that Noel Baba had delivered to that Starbucks the night before. It was at that moment that I realized how close we had become. The question is, how do we get there? How do we go from having a company-customer relationship that was all about latte making to a cross-cultural friendship? The story starts in 2003 when I joined the US Air Force. Before I joined the military, I had never been outside of the country, so I want you to imagine how excited I was when I had the opportunity to do so for the very first time in 2004. I'm sitting in the passenger terminal, my bags are packed to the brim, my old school Walkman is loaded with fresh batteries, and I am about to begin my 20-plus hour journey to Qatar in the Middle East. Excited? Definitely. But I'm also a little terrified. I'm terrified not because of what I don't know. I'm terrified because of what I know. I know the Middle East is a place of violence based on what I had seen on the news the night prior. And I know that Muslims despise me, a Westerner, based on what my peers had said in the weeks leading up to that particular deployment. So on the one hand, yeah, I'm incredibly excited to be going abroad for the very first time ever. But on the other hand, I'm a little terrified. I can't shake what I know, and this is what I know. So I board the plane, fly to the Middle East, disembark, get to work, and one day I decide to venture out into the city of Doha. And you know what I see? I see this, and this. I don't see riots. People don't hate me. I don't hear any gunfire. I see a way of living that is different than my own, but I also see a humanity that transcends those differences. 12 years goes by and I'm still traveling the world. Every time I go abroad, I can't help but notice the stark difference that exists between the world I see on the news or hear about from friends who have never been abroad and the world I experience firsthand. Misrepresentations, or more appropriately, the misunderstandings that stem from misrepresentations, really frustrate me because I think they divide a world that can be, and to some extent is meant to be, united. In other words, they misunderstand us, we misunderstand them, and this is the result. I believe the most powerful thing you can do to help solve the epidemic of cross-cultural misunderstanding is go abroad. Set sail for a world that is new to you. When you arrive, don't just be a visitor. I want you to actually immerse yourself in that new world moment. Experience that cross-cultural encounter. From a place of humble curiosity and respect, ask questions about their customs and cultures, their passions and fears. If you commit yourself to this simple task, you will gain greater understanding of the world. So it all sounds pretty easy, right? Go abroad, experience the world, gain understanding. Easy said, done. Unfortunately, that's not the case because standing in our way is a big thing called culture shock, the psychological and physiological reactions we experience when we are placed in situations of cultural unfamiliarity. In general, culture shock is thought to consist of 4 different phases. The first phase is the honeymoon phase. Jeremy, that's me, is headed abroad. He's excited to be headed to someplace unfamiliar, so excited he can't help but take a selfie and post it onto Facebook before he departs. After a long plane ride, he finally arrives at his destination. He's a bit jet-lagged and tired, sure, but that doesn't stop him. He goes out and explores the unknown. Everything he sees and senses is fascinating. The uniqueness of the architecture, the complexity of the language, the yumminess of the food, even the different pace of life. The second phase is frustration. The new and exciting stuff is still there, but that euphoria has worn off. Now you begin to realize how much your new environment differs from your old. You start to miss the little things about home. Perhaps you even have a sense of cultural exclusion, like being a Red Sox fan at Yankee Stadium. All of this provokes a range of responses, such as homesickness, withdrawal, loss of motivation and sleep, and even in some cases, anger. Every one of my adventures abroad has involved a shift into the frustration phase. While living in Turkey, for example, I was out and about one day. I had a shopping list of things I needed to buy to make dinner that night, some spices, vegetables, and a kitchen knife. Surprisingly, I couldn't find everything in one place as I would if I went to Target back home in the US. Instead, I had to walk around the winding, complicated market, trying to navigate a map that did not physically exist, but was clearly present in the minds of locals. Not having that inside information, not having that local knowledge really frustrated me, so I ended up giving up my search midway, despite lacking some of the items I need. Now, we're a resourceful bunch in the Air Force, so ultimately, I repurposed a pair of scissors to get the job done, but that's besides the point. The point is, what was once fascinating and interesting had become burdensome and aggravating. The third phase is adjustment. Now you're becoming more familiar and comfortable with the local customs and culture. Difficulties still exist, but you're better able to handle the situations you previously found frustrating. In other words, you begin to figure out that map that I referred to, the one that only exists in the minds of locals. The final, fourth phase is acceptance. Cue Barry Manilow, looks like we made it. Things are different where you are, and you lack complete understanding of your surroundings, but that's okay. You acknowledge differences for what they are, and you become more accepting of that which is around you. Now, I want to return back to the frustration phase. Think about, because it's critically important when we start talking about cross-cultural engagement, think about these responses and the ramifications of these responses in an international business context, for example. Joe, sent abroad, if he is not able to adapt or adjust to the local customs or cultures, he may need to be sent home early. The cost associated with frustrated Joe's return is absolutely huge. Each individual failure is estimated to cost about $1 million. Even more problematic, let's say frustrated Joe decides to stay in place. He decides to remain abroad. Ultimately, this can lead to other effects, such as damaged relationships with local clients, customers, business partners, or government officials. Now, loss of revenue matters. That first stuff matters, don't get me wrong. But what I'm really interested in is the second part, how frustrated Joe's culture shock is going to damage relationships, widen the gap between us and them, and ultimately disrupt that path that leads to greater cross-cultural collaboration. How do we prevent the negative reactions that manifest during the frustration phase? There's a wealth of literature out there that talks about pre-departure and post-arrival cultural training in this particular sense. But unfortunately, not all organizations have programs like that, nor can all organizations afford to have programs like that. I have a rather simple solution that's cost-free. Find some place familiar and use it to center yourself when the unfamiliar seems unbearable. For me, that place is Starbucks. Now, I know what you're thinking. This dude's talking about cross-cultural whatnot, and he's up here preaching about Starbucks, some US-based company. I want you to bear with me. Hear me out. With over 21,000 stores in 65 countries, I can pretty much go anywhere in the world, find a Starbucks, order my usual, and experience just enough of home to get me through that frustration phase. Now, I'm not suggesting you all go out there and become Starbucks fiends. If you do, I fully expect Howard Schultz, if you're listening, to pay up. Rather, I'm suggesting you go and find a place that's familiar to you. A basketball court if you're athletic, a church if you're religious, or a park if you're the outdoorsy type. The point is, when fascination turns into frustration, go to that place that's familiar and use it to make it through the worst of culture shock. Now, what's so great about this idea is it's not just about you. It also presents an incredible opportunity to build a bridge between us and them. Think about it. What your place of refuge, be it a Starbucks or a basketball court, is not just familiar to you, it's also familiar to the locals who visit that establishment on a daily basis or use that public space on a daily basis. What I encourage you to do is leverage that shared familiarity to connect with and learn about a world that is different from your own. If you do so, you'll find friendship in a game of pickup basketball or in a grande latte such as I. And who knows, maybe you'll develop relationships that will ultimately end up in you receiving a gift that represents so much more than what's inside. But what truly matters is the gift that you will have given to all of humanity, and that's by forming cross-cultural friendships, you will help create a more understanding and peaceful world. Thank you.